Good afternoon and welcome to Lunch with Leaders with Vision. Today's topic is on the challenges of the capital area transportation. But before we get started, we have a couple of announcements. Everyone in the room, please make sure you get our first newsletter. It will report on our progress of our organization over the last 20 months. It was a startup organization, but we take on the hot topics. And this is a personal invitation. If you're not a member, please consider joining. The application's on the back page along with a calendar for the year. That's a set calendar. There is one error on the back page, and that is February the 19th, not the 9th. Okay? But we make the newsletter for everybody, even those who want to pick. Okay? So that will give you the basic outline of what we're going to do this year. And we will be choosing the hottest topics. For those of you who want to know what the topic will be in October, it will be the 6th District Congressional Candidate Forum. I've got 2 confirmed candidates already, and that'd be Dan Slater and Edwin Edwards, and we're working our way through the rest of the list. So that having been said, thank you for coming, and each of you has received a copy of the bios of our speakers. So you can read how wonderful they are, and I am simply going to introduce them by name. And starting off the program will be Dennis Decker, who is the Assistant Secretary of Multimodal Planning at the Department of Transportation. Dennis?
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Certainly my pleasure to be here this afternoon and to be a part of this distinguished panel in discussing this very important subject, certainly for the Baton Rouge area. I know it's important to everybody here. Let me start out by saying that we at Louisiana Department of Transportation certainly understand that people deal with inconveniences, aggravation, whatever word you want to put on it, whatever adjective you want to put on it in terms of dealing with the congestion in the Baton Rouge area. And we are working very diligently with the local officials that you're going to hear today, talking about some solutions. And we do think we have some possibilities. We got challenges. There's no solutions that are easy, but certainly we got challenges in terms of funding. We got challenges in terms of how do we get through some solutions that people want to see quickly. I know you want to see them quickly today, if not tomorrow. And certainly we're trying to address these things. But before I get into actually talking about some specifics, I know I'm under a very tight timeline here, so I'm going to talk fast. I'm from Georgia, but I can't talk very fast, but I will talk as fast as I can. We have underway right now our transportation plan, which is our long-range plan looking at Louisiana's needs for all the modes. It's actually a 30-year plan. We're in the midst of it right now, looking at what are the needs, what are the revenues, what are the possible revenues in terms of addressing what the transportation needs are over the next 30 years within the context of the economy, within the context of the funding. Currently, transportation is important to us all here, and if we don't address these, including congestion, including our funding issues, then it can certainly have a negative impact on our economic health, as well as the quality of life for us here in the capital city, as well as the rest of the state. So it's very important that we address these things. We're in the final stages of putting the draft plan together right now, and we'll be making it publicly available in the next few months. And I certainly encourage you that as it is made publicly available to comment on it and provide us your input. I need to talk just a minute about the challenges we've got in that plan. Certainly the cost of infrastructure is going up every day as our revenues are either staying flat or declining. We're dealing with revenues that were basically set in place 20 to 25 years ago and haven't been increased since that time. We deal with a gasoline tax as our primary mode of revenue, and it's a per gallon increase, so we get the same amount of money if gas is $1 or if it's $4. So we haven't seen an increase in revenues as a result of gas prices going up. In case you're thinking, hey, they're getting more money as the price of gasoline is going up, we're not. So we're not being able to increase our revenues as the needs have gone up and the cost of infrastructure has gone up. And maintaining what we have is taking a bigger and bigger chunk of actually what revenues we do have. And I'm going to talk about that very briefly. But let me say, just over the course of our developing this long-range plan, we reached out to the public, did some phone surveys. We reached out to our legislature and did some surveys of them. And we had some actually interviews of stakeholders to find out what the issues were. And they told us loud and clear at DOTD that we need to maintain what we have. Is our first and foremost goal, that we can't do anything else, including addressing safety, congestion, other things, if we don't first maintain what we have. And so that's important. They also told us in terms of revenues that they would support local approved tolls and voter approved taxes and fees at the local level was their number 1 and 2 means of collecting revenues. So not increasing the gas tax was not something that we heard loud and clear. So we're dealing with those issues as we now try to develop projects and develop plans to address the congestion. And I'm going to talk just very briefly about the projects that are in the plan. One of the projects in the plan is actually addressing congestion on I-10 from the Mississippi River to the split. And we have a project underway to look at what can we do. Certainly widening comes to the forefront in terms of that. Looking at where we drop a lane at I-10 there near the end of the bridge. Those are certainly going to be part of the discussion, as well as trying to address the needs and the concerns of the people throughout that corridor. And we're going to try our best to try to address those needs. We're also going to be we're initiating a project to create a new Mississippi River Bridge and a connector from LA1 in West Baton Rouge to LA30 in East Baton Rouge. And that study is just now getting underway. We're projecting the cost of that project to be $800 million. I've been given the tug. We're also looking at other projects that in West Baton Rouge and in East Baton Rouge and Ascension Parish that I'm sure these gentlemen are going to cover, but I'll be glad if they don't to discuss these in further detail if you have questions about it. So with that, I'll give the podium.
Thank you, Dennis. Our next speaker is James Setz. He's Capital Region Planning Commission Executive Director.
Thank you very much, Gene. I'm going to just kind of piggyback on what Dennis started talking about. As he kind of gave you that broad outline. The state has a lot of needs. The region does have a lot of needs. And from a regional perspective, the first thing that he mentioned, maintenance, is one of the ones we have to look at. As he related the survey that the state has been doing on the statewide plan, says that that's the highest ranked customer want, is that what they have to be maintained properly. So we, just amongst the parishes and as a region, we have a deficiency in that. For example, and I know Livingston Parish isn't here, but probably you've seen the Livingston Parish news that they have a $12 million maintenance need every year. They're funding it at $3.7 million. So suddenly we have $8 million a year just on parish roads in one parish that we need to come up with funds for. So that is certainly a need that's looking forward we need to address, and also looking forward, the aging population is something we have to address. Two of the fastest growing parishes in the state are Ascension and Livingston, and in 2040, and I'm going to use data from the statewide plan, in 2040 each of those parishes will have 3 to 4 times the number of elderly that they do now today. And when you think about that, that's very reasonable, because that elderly population number will be exactly what that parish population was in 1970. So, born in 1968, I'll be elderly in 2040. I'm going to contribute to a parish in this region as an aging need. So think about it, cast back in time. If you would have told the people in Livingston or Ascension Parish, we need transit or good transportation opportunities for the elderly, and your entire parish is elderly, they wouldn't have known how to respond to that. But that's the case that they're going to be faced with less than 25 years from now. So, I mean, 26 years from now. And then another thing I'd like to talk about briefly is we have tremendous opportunities. The shale gas plays that are happening nationwide is impacting our river, our rail, our pipeline traffic. So it's not just the roads that are being impacted. And maybe you've noticed on both sides of the river, there's a lot more trains coming every day, all the time now. CPEX just put a boom without bust conference on last month, and what they talked about was very clear. In the state of Louisiana, for each well, the parish only gets less than $50,000 per well. Talking to the parish engineers up in northwest Louisiana, they are doing much more than $50,000 damage on your roadways and bridges per well being drilled. So we have a funding issue on how do we make sure that the boom that we're having comes with a commensurate improvement or at least replacement of the bridges and roads that are being used during that time. And then I'd like to kind of like Dennis did, we'll talk kind of like region-wide. You know, we have needs in our region, and people always ask, well, what are we going to do about those needs? Well, we have two very good examples of ways that our communities in our region have handled those needs. The first is the Greenlight program. And I'm not going to take Michael's thunder. He's going to talk about the Greenlight program. And it's been very successful here in Baton Rouge. It's $1 billion. It's been the only $1 billion local expenditure in Louisiana in a long time. And it's really improving traffic on those roads that have been widened and that are slated to be widened. We know that we're going to have significant congestion relief on them. The second is the Bass Pro Shop. Everybody always talks about how we have the need for more public-private partnerships in our community. Well, in Livingston Parish, they passed, not one time, but 5 different voting entities overwhelmingly voted for Bass Pro. And that is an example of a successful public-private partnership in our community that can be replicated if we could find the right conditions to bring that to fruition. And so I would like to finish up like Dennis talked about. Everybody knows that the new Mississippi River Bridge is a problem. I'm going to be going to the West Baton, the Port Allen Master Plan meeting tonight. What if we had to move half of those people from the new bridge up to the old bridge? Half of them would probably be going through Port Allen. That's a significant impact to that very small community that we really haven't talked about as we talk about moving people from the new to the old bridge. So yes, we do have regional needs, and we're all working together on those to address those. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And he brings up the point. We, as citizens, have to think more regionally, not just in our own city or parish. At your table, you will see white blank cards for questions. If you will fill them out, raise your hand, someone will pick them up, and they'll be answered after we have the presentations. Our next speaker is Mike Bruce, who is a transportation consultant to East Baton Rouge Parish President.
Thank you, Gene. Glad to be here. I do work for Stantec. I'm a consultant with East Baton Rouge, and there's a lot of things to talk about in transportation, as we all know. If there's one takeaway from this that everybody's probably going to hit on that people are tired of hearing about, it's funding. Funding is a problem. It's a funding at the federal level. It's funding problem at the state level, and certainly the local level. We've seen what our mayor has done with the Greenlight plan that just got mentioned that Mike's going to talk about. He's taken advantage of traffic impact fees. From a local standpoint, we're very limited as to what we can do for transportation, so you do what you can. A Greenlight, traffic impact. He's also aggressively approached the state relative to their road transfer program, which I think some of you have read about, where the state's is asking local governments to take over state routes. And in doing so, if they're not really regional routes, it makes sense for the local governments to own them and maintain them. But as payment for that, the state is giving them construction dollars to the local governments. And our mayor's approached that issue very, very aggressively and moving forward with it. But on the funding side, the takeaway a different perspective. I've studied this to death. I've worked on a lot of committees on how to change funding for transportation. It's a regressive tax. It's a flat tax on gasoline. Two things have happened. Because it's flat, we haven't kept up with inflation. It's worth less than half of what its value was when it passed over 25 years ago. But on top of that, appropriately, we've increased our gas mileage in our cars so much that we're not getting much return at the gas pump as we used to. So the average person in the room used to pay 2 cents a mile that we travel on roads. Today we're paying less than a penny a mile for those same travels that we take. And because of that, we can't afford to maintain our roads like we used to, much less build new projects, much less pay for transit that we all like. But there are a lot of projects that are exciting. The I-10 widening project at the bridge. Pee Wee probably is very excited that that's reopening. The state is taking that on. And Dennis announced that a few minutes ago, so that's very exciting. Future BR has a lot of road projects in it. One of them is a transit project, is the streetcar on Nicholson being aggressively pursued for funding, that type of thing. CATS is certainly making a lot of progress. Long way to go. Transit is a piece of the puzzle in congestion. We all know that. It's not the answer. It's not the answer by itself, but it's a critical piece of the puzzle. And lastly, there's big projects, toll projects. And the one I'm interested in most is the Baton Rouge Loop that most people in the room think is dead. It's not dead. The loop is still breathing. We're waiting for some federal approvals, permitting. There's initiatives going on to entice public-private partnerships, investments from private partners to build some of the loop, such as the North Bypass. That is ongoing as we sit here today. There's a groundswell of actually public interest in the loop and pieces of the loop and projects like that can solve some of our major problems as we wait for the federal government and the states to solve the transportation funding issues. It won't be easy. Funding is a hard lift. It's a heavy lift for anything these days. But just like you pay a sales tax at the grocery store or when you buy furniture, that has always kept up with inflation. The point is that we have not kept up with inflation. We're falling very far behind. And our roads are less safe. They're in bad condition. And of course, as the population grows, we're not able to increase the capacities we need to move forward. So that will continue to be the major issue going forward until we solve that problem. And it's not a local government issue. It has to happen pretty much at the federal level to solve that problem. So I'm just going to leave it on that note. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And to follow up on that, when you think that our community refers to a bridge as the new bridge and it's over 45 years old, it gives you some idea that we might be behind the times a bit. Our next speaker is the president of West Baton Rouge Parish, Riley Pee Wee Brookline.
Thank you, Gene, and it's a pleasure for me to be here. And I was glad to hear Mike Bruce talk about the loop, because in West Baton Rouge, it's not a bad word. You know, we see the traffic back up daily on the Mississippi River Bridge going south on LA1 across the Intercoastal Bridge. It's a 2 to 3 mile backup every day. You know, we have a lot of construction work down in Ifferville Parish, West Baton Rouge Parish, and even Ascension, the port that's on the west side of the river, where people coming and going to those plants. West Baton Rouge Parish is the smallest parish in the state, and our population is about 25,000. But the Intercoastal Canal is the only crossing across the Intercoastal Canal without going back into Ifferville Parish, taking the Grove State Road, coming around. It's a 53-mile detour. There's no other way to get across the Intercoastal Canal. And if you remember, they had a barge hit a bridge down on Highway 77 earlier this year. It stayed closed about 6 months. Well, we were actually trapped in West Baton Rouge Parish. You know, we always say, what if? What if that bridge was closed? What if the Intercoastal Bridge was closed? But we did have that incident. We had an ice storm. You remember we had several of them this past year. We could not get out of the south end of the parish, you know, without going all the way. Of course, you couldn't go all the way down to New Orleans or possibly Downsonville. That bridge was open, I don't remember. But we are in a vulnerable place, and we need another connector across the Intercoastal Canal. But we also need to do some things to be more creative in our region when we look at things like toll roads. And let me tell you, I have a lot of people coming to my office and calling me every day. They're willing to pay tax. You know, tax is not a bad word. I know our governor doesn't like it, but you know, I think we need to get somebody to start talking about these things, because you know, I talk to people in the service industry. If you got a guy who is an electrician, a plumber, an air conditioning man, a truck driver, whatever he's doing, if he's got to sit 45 minutes, an hour in traffic, and he's trying to bill a customer for his time from when he leaves his shop till he gets back or whatever, you know, it's almost impossible. It's costing the companies money, it's getting the customers, you know, irritated, and it's just not a good situation. But I think what we need to do to come together as a capital area delegation, you know, when we look at what we have on the board, you know, we got the West Bank Expressway, which is a good project. You know, we got the bump. That's another really good project, and they both do wonderful things in West Baton Rouge Parish. And we got the Mississippi River Bridge and all of its things that we need to put across there. But when we add all of these projects up, and if we could build them all, you know, it'll cost about $2.5 billion to build those projects. And talking to Jamie earlier and some of the legislators during the session, we have an opportunity to probably by 2020 to possibly bind out what we call a ×2 program. We don't know if it's going to happen, but we're talking about it. So by doing that, we would get about $4 billion in the state that they could take care of some of these things. But when the capital area is divided on projects, when, you know, they have needs in North Louisiana, they got the Lake Charles Bridge on I-10 that needs to be redone, and, you know, they got stuff in New Orleans, they got the North Shore. Everybody wants a project. And if we only got $4 billion to go around, we need to get together as a legislative group, as the parish presidents, and we need to focus on one project. And in my opinion, that would be a bridge across the Mississippi River Bridge, Mississippi Bridge across the river. Excuse me, but those are the things that, and I think, and Dennis talked about it could be in West Baton Rouge, and I think it would relieve the congestion on in the Coastal Canal as well as the I-10 bridge. But it's something that we're gonna have to do. You know, we had an active shooter class yesterday in West Baton Rouge Parish. Actually, it's our second one. Well, we had all of the people from the school, law enforcement, the SWAT team. We had the fire departments, and everybody who's in charge when we have a shooting in a school or situation. It could be in a mall or whatever. And we came to a stump when we said, how, if we got mass casualties, and how are we going to transport those people? We don't have a hospital on the west side of the river, except New Roads, and that's probably 45 minutes, you know, to get in there. We got the one they built in Platinum, but it can't handle a mass casualty case or something like this. You know, we got chemical plants, we got barges, we got trains up down the river. So we got all of these issues, but we need to focus on one project, and let's try to get it done. And in closing, I'd just like to tell you, and I understand y'all do have a congressional candidates coming next week. We need to emphasize on getting our governor, our state elected officials, our congressmen, where they want to put the transportation infrastructure as a priority.
You make a point, Ronald. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
All right, our next speaker is from Ascension Parish. Chris Lohr is the immediate past council president. Chris?
Thank you, Gene. Like everyone else, I'm glad to be here. I wanted to start by giving some insight into Ascension Parish in particular, because some of you may not be familiar with it, other than what you read in the papers. Which a lot of that is true, of course. We have been the fastest growing parish in the last 10 years. However, it might surprise you to know that we have one 4-lane road in Ascension Parish, and that's actually only part of the way. We have one more now under construction, so we're thrilled about that, Highway 42. We also have a 3-lane road under construction, Highway 73. So why is that the case? Obviously, funding, of course, it always comes down to that. Our fundamentals are actually pretty messed up. We have about 4% of our property tax pies goes to Ascension Parish government. The rest, surprisingly, the large bulk of it, schools and sheriff. Well, guess why people move to Ascension Parish? For the schools, because people have chosen to invest in them. They're doing well. So we're heavily dependent on sales taxes. Where do most people in Ascension Parish spend their money? Unfortunately, many of them go to Baton Rouge. And you know, we're outside the parish. So we are, it always comes down to funding. We are struggling, as Jamie said, on the maintenance front alone, struggling to just try to keep our roads maintained. And all of this growth that continues to come in, there's all those houses being built and all that, That's great, but it's not keeping up with the demand. Again, because the property tax are largely not coming to parish government. So we need to we need to be creative. We need to find out ways on funding. We have been a part of multiple projects trying to get them off the ground. We just, in the last month, have partnered with Iberville to try to get the West Bank Expressway moving along faster. We see that not only from a traffic relief standpoint, but from the economic development that would bring on the west side, which could in turn open up 122,000 acres, I believe it is, of land for industrial development that could hopefully pay off down the line. Our traffic is rush hour traffic, getting to and from work, whether that's folks in North Ascension, which make up half of the population now lives in Prairieville. Many of them work in Baton Rouge, including myself, trying to get there and get home. Trying to get to the plants, of course, which is our bread and butter. You know, it's overwhelming. The expansion's great. We're excited about it, like Jamie said. The boom should pay for itself. You know, we've got to, I think, do a better job of when we get these plants here and these expansions and all this work with LED. We need to make sure that the return on investment might take 10 years or something, but the impact's immediate, and that's a struggle for our folks. So some of the other projects, we're partnered with Livingston on the Ascension-Livingston corridor to try to have another outlet from 12 coming down and diverting some of the plant traffic that comes in from Livingston into Ascension Parish. We're also eagerly looking at the Baton Rouge bump that could help in Prairieville, some of that traffic there. The I-10 widening, continuing onward. We're excited about Prairieville, but the demand is, of course, still there all the way. So we're looking at, we're anxiously hoping that happens, and looking at as well another on-ramp in Ascension Parish. The rail has been mentioned before, but I think that would be phenomenal, and I'd love to see that. We have borderless stops planned in Ascension, so I'm looking forward to more movement on that. But no matter what, I think all of these projects, it comes down to the theory of widening versus alternative. You can only widen something so much. I'm an IT guy, so forgive the IT analogy, but it's like, you know, if you had one big cable to your house and it's got the greatest bandwidth in the world, you know, when that thing gets cut, you know, you're out of luck. So it's, you know, if we widen I-10, and of course we need to do that, but we got to have alternatives, because every time you got a tractor trailer fire and it turns over, you know, people need to have other alternatives, and that's what all these things are about, trying to distribute that network and get some traffic relief. So again, it's not about lack of ideas. I'm supportive of all of them. I know everybody is. I think Pee Wee's comments were dead on about how we need to get together as a region and really decide what we're gonna prioritize, what we're gonna go after. And then the other projects, we gotta have tolls. Straight up, if we want to get something done, I think then we need to just move forward with tolls, and we need to, you know, just communicate to people that, hey, you don't have to take it. You don't, you know, keep taking the road you're taking now. But if you want to go faster, here's an option for you. But you know, the only option is that's not an option is doing nothing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And our wrap-up batter is Mike Sanji, who will address the Greenlight program. And as the Baton Rouge Area Chamber Chairman of the Board, he'll give us a business perspective of the transportation challenges. Mike?
I was elected to go last. I don't know if that means I'm the worst speaker, the best speaker, or just good at cleaning up the mess here, but so be it. My name is Michael Sanji. I am title in the Greenlight Plan is Program Director, which I've served since 2006. Our firm, CSRS, has led the program management team since that time, and we work day to day with the Department of Public Works in overseeing the program. The Greenlight Plan is all the intuition of our Mayor, Kip Holden. Envisioned this immediately after he took office, and in a matter of months, not years, had a proposition in front of the voters to extend a half-cent sales tax that was existing, it's not a new tax, out 30 years. And the key to that is that extension of time on the books allowed for bonding. And that was really the key to the success of the program. But also, before it even went to the voters, numerous public meetings. I think he did two public meetings in every council district, and you can count those up, that's a lot. But the point is, he got very good support from the community before it went to the polls. And I think the approval, if I'm not mistaken, was almost in the 60-40 range, which today, as you all know, getting taxes approved is quite a phenomenal feat. The plan is not quite $1 billion. You are correct, after Hurricane Katrina, it was. We didn't talk about that too much. We were very fortunate that inflation was driven down in those post-Katrina years after things settled down. Frankly, we had to construct it at the time of Katrina, we would have built far fewer projects, so we were very lucky in that regard. We've sold over $270 million in bonds, and I can't tell you how much having cash in hand can do to enhance your program. It was certainly one of the keys to the success, but we have now committed over $500 million to the program. Many of the projects finished, but many more. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, and I think you can remember this. If you simply go to the drgov.com website, there's a bunch of icons over to the right side. One of them says Green Light Plan. You can get all the information that you want on all 36 of the projects, the status, the budget, schedule, whatnot. So please feel free to access that. So when you talk about key successes, you know, the typical project funding prior to this used state and federal money, so the road design and the planning, environmental studies had to go through not only local authority approvals, but state approvals, federal approvals, and frankly, that took time. Again, selling bonds, knowing we had cash in hand, we knew that we could skip the state and the federal processes, and we went to work as managers looking at the whole design process and consolidating as many steps as we possibly could. And I've got to compliment the engineering and the construction professions, because we did a lot of things differently. We did not receive a lot of pushback. Everyone understood that the mission was to get the roads on the ground. Happy to report that in less than 7 years, we got 30 projects to the construction phase. Now that's not, several of these projects, of the 36 projects, are broken into 2 or 3 phases, but for a period of about 2 years, I believe we were bidding a project a month. And that's about all that the local construction market can handle. So I think we accelerated that to the greatest degree that we could. Just some of the more notable projects, Starring Lane just finished up. South Harrells Ferry Road, very long roadway improvement there. Jones Creek, Segan Lane. We did a lot of intersection improvements. Coursey at Sherwood, Perkins at Acadian, Foster at Government. We brought in about $20 million in state and federal funding. We've received over $6 million in right-of-way donations. Again, having cash to build roads can do some wonderful things. We implemented a corridor preservation program to keep right-of-way from having to pay more for improvements in the future. And the program is not over. We will let bids on 3 more projects this fall: Essen at I-10, the final stage of Stumberg Extension, and O'Neill Lane. The state will also let bids on Nicholson at Brightside. And so we should have as many as 6 or 7 projects under construction next year, so the program is not over. So can I have 1 minute to touch on the chamber?
Since you're not a candidate, yes.
I'm not a candidate. I had two roles, but I just want to say this: the Baton Rouge Area Chamber is a regional organization. They made that change several years ago. So if we are trying to treat economic development on a regional basis, which we are, and I think all the surrounding parishes would agree with that. Mike mentioned the Loop. I think the Loop was an example of why we need to be thinking regionally on transportation. It is an idea. Everyone has opinions about ideas, but it was an idea, and it is a plan. And if we can't get the regional leaders together to agree on a plan, that's where the problem that's where the project ends. So I can't stress enough the regional approach to everything we do, including transportation, because that's what it's going to take to solve these problems about getting across the river, getting traffic bypassed around Baton Rouge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And has anybody got their questions written out yet? Okay, John, if you'll raise your hand, John will pick them up. All right, the first question is, and I guess this is to you, Michael, is technology available to improve the sequencing of the lights on the major roads from South Baton Rouge to North Baton Rouge, specifically Acadian, College, Essen, Bluebonnet, and Seagan?
Let Mike Bruce answer.
Oh, Mike Bruce, I'm sorry. Had the wrong mic.
Yes, traffic signal technology is wonderful these days. It's not easy, by the way. You see pictures of corridors that all the lights are green at once, and then they all turn red at once. And in Baton Rouge, we don't have a lot of no left turn routes. So when you've got all these movements taking place at every signal, and you're trying to coordinate signals for a whole route, it's very complex. But the technology exists. We're into phase 6 of
7 was just awarded.
6 and 7. 7 is just awarded, going under construction. You see construction on Government Street with new signals. That's part of the program that has been done with mostly federal dollars through the MPO, through the city and the state, have all worked together to get 6 phases. Much progress has been made. The technology is there, but it's very expensive. Each one of these signals, every time you see a new signal go in, it's roughly $300,000. And when you take that through a whole corridor, you're talking about millions of dollars for a corridor. So that is one of the, once again, you get back to funding. The goal is to fix all these major routes, all these major corridors, to synchronize the signals in such a way that when you're going somewhere, you don't have to wait at every signal. So we're trying to get there.
Thank you. This one goes to DOTT and MPO. Would funding situation be less untenable had state government not allowed the theft of timed funds to uses to which they were not statutorily or constitutionally dedicated? Dennis?
Make sure I'm understanding the question. It's about using time funds, using regular program funds for time projects. Is that what I think I'm hearing? It is true that everybody's familiar with the time projects that the legislature gave us, I think back in the 80s. I wasn't here, but I think it's back in the 80s. A decision was made several years ago to try to expedite those projects, and so the time program was bonded out. The 4 cents a gallon that was dedicated to the time routes was bonded out. Unfortunately, the cost of that bond sale exceeded what is coming in currently through that 4 cents a gallon. So there's about a $25 million surplus, or not surplus, but of program funds that are being used on the time routes. In addition to that, we still have 2 projects that aren't completed that are on the time routes. One's Florida Boulevard Bridge in New Orleans, and the other one is the I-12 to Bush over on the east side of the state. But to answer, I think the question was, is this constitutionally allowable? Yes, those are eligible projects. Those projects are eligible to be used. They're state routes, and state funds can therefore be used on them. And so there's not a constitutional problem with using those funds. But if I haven't quite answered it, let me know. But that's.
I think the question was kind of reversed. My question, and I wrote the question. It's my understanding that in the early years of time, some money was taken out of it to use for purposes that were not time projects, and that is why it has to now be
shortfall. I'm going to have to plead that I'm not familiar with that and how those funds were used. If there's anybody on the panel that is familiar with it, but I'm not familiar that those funds were. In other words, they were pulled off and used for other purposes other than transportation.
Things like state highway employee retirement and other projects, and perhaps some for the general fund, as is, as you know, rampant in this administration now, take a dedicated fund.
Well, I will say that we are using general funds now to supplement the time, so it's going the other way. So we are actually supplementing the time program with general funds, about $25 million a year, as I understand it. So, but I'm sorry, that's the best answer I can give you.
Okay. Mike Bruce, can you explain the IBM Smarter Cities project of BRAC?
It's me again.
Like that, two Michaels.
No. Just kidding. Well, I can't go into great detail because we're still setting up the coordination meetings that are going to take place between the city and IBM. And what's happened is IBM has given the city a grant. We competed for a grant. We were very successful. I don't think it had anything to do with the fact that they're coming here and they want traffic to be better when they expand to their full 1,000 people or whatever it's going to be. But the idea is that they're going to take all the data, and there's a tremendous amount of data. Jamie can tell you that. The MPO has a tremendous amount of data. The state does. The city has data. They're going to try and take all that data and put it and use it in such a way to figure out exactly what the primary objective should be in fixing our transportation system. And I'm not talking about new pavement. I'm talking about intelligent transportation systems such as congestion routing, things that could make our system work more efficiently that would help reduce congestion. And they're gonna mine that data and set up a program that the city can implement and the region can implement to improve traffic in a different manner, a more intelligent way to improve our traffic, which a lot of times we're already working on. We're already doing a lot of ITS work, but the IABM project is gonna give us a lot of new ways to create those improvements.
Follow-up question, how many of the jobs people will be hired locally, and how many people are being brought in?
Well, my understanding of this grant is that they're bringing in expertise and they're gonna be on the ground working with the existing officials. It's not a grant of money, it's a grant of, if anybody in the audience can explain it better, they're welcome, but it's not a grant of money, it's a grant of their time and effort to give us a plan to utilize our transportation system more efficiently.
I don't think you answered the question. The question is how many jobs
None.
on the IBM will be brought in?
You're talking about the IBM
IBM,
building?
yes.
Oh, the IBM building.
It says the IBM Smarter Cities project.
No new jobs will be created using that Smarter Cities project. It is basically a technology gift from IBM, a grant from them on technology.
Thank you. Mike and Pee Wee, several parishes were mentioned. It was stated that there should be meetings with all the elected officials in each of those. Is there a group already established? How many meetings have been held?
Want me to answer that?
Yeah, sure.
Go for it, Jerry.
Thank you. Still kind of left out, so I'll answer that. The federal planning process, which I oversaw for the state of Louisiana for 12 and a half years, mandates that if you're an urbanized area of more than 50,000, you have to have your elected officials come together, form what is called a metropolitan planning organization, hold regular meetings, make a plan, both short-term and long-term. And because we're in a non-attainment area under the Clean Air Act, we also have to follow many EPA and DEQ edicts as we produce that work. So the Capital Region Planning Commission acts as the staff for the Baton Rouge Metropolitan Planning Organization that currently consists of all the parish presidents and then the mayors of the municipalities within the urbanized area, which at this time is, I believe, 17. So, yes, we do meet regularly. We actually met twice this month, one with the Citizens Technical Advisory Committee, where we had a long conversation about regional priorities. And then we met just last Tuesday with the Policy Committee, the actual elected officials.
Just to add on to that a little bit, we do meet regularly at the MPO meetings, but you know, we haven't really had a good meeting with all of the parish presidents in the 5 parish regions since we were actually on the involved in the loop, which we called our Capital Area Transportation Committee. But I think that's what we need to do. We need to get them back together because we need to look at the projects that the legislators and some of the engineering firms have proposed. Like I said, the West Bank Expressway, the bump, the loop, the new bridge, and all of these projects, and kind of come together and get a consensus of what we think should be the priority, and we need to move forward. When we were in the loop, when things didn't go well, the political pressure got on some of the presidents, and they started backing out of the loop project. And so, but we need to get back together and try to see if we can't get this thing steered right and leave the politics at the house.
Okay, the next question is for DOTD and MPO. Please explain DOTD's position, logistically or political. We are told by DOTD that deletion of Washington exit would not significantly improve traffic flow off of I-10 bridge. This defies logic, as the extension of a second lane and elimination of transversal from I-10 would clearly facilitate merging of eastbound traffic.
I understand. Let me say right at the beginning is we are looking at the Washington Street exit. As you're going eastbound on I-10, the Washington Street exit is really right at the end of the taper, or it becomes the taper of the ending of the lane, that outside lane on I-10, which makes I-10 become one lane. If you close the exit, I-10 is still going to be one lane there. You aren't creating another lane. We have looked at it from a capacity standpoint. Closing or opening or leaving open Washington Street is really not addressing the problem. We have also looked at the crashes, wondering if there were people trying to merge all the way across the I-10 lanes from 110, trying to exit there. We did not see a history of crashes there as a result of that. But with all that said, we are going to still study as a part of our I-10 corridor, looking at what to do with the Washington Street exit. There are certainly people that are very adamant about keeping it. There are a lot of people that I've even heard, I guess the comment here is, it makes a lot of sense to close it. We're also going to be looking at possibly moving it. We could relocate it over to a left exit off of 110 is one consideration. I'm not sure that's a serious consideration, but it is one consideration to be looked at. But the bottom line is part of the I-10 study from the Mississippi River Bridge to I-12 split. We will be looking at all the interchanges, but we will specifically be looking at the Washington Street exit and how to address it.
Don't go away, Dennis. Would you also address the Government Street entrance to I-10? Because going across that, getting from I-110 to 10 is very hazardous.
Let me make sure, the Government Street?
Yeah, Government Street, where you come up right there where they're turning off to go to the bridge.
Yes.
And they're going straight, and you're going across traffic.
Okay, I think I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the merger that occurs from that entrance ramp just as I-10 and 110 are coming together.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, certainly that's is an issue. That will be looked at because it's part of the handling traffic as the two come together there, as 110 and I-10 come together. So how to address that merger, but it's not going to be an easy solution. That actually happens to be a fairly long entrance ramp, so those people have some distance there to merge into traffic. So it's actually better than a lot of our other merger points on the freeway. Actually, that's one of the longer mergers. So it actually is pretty good, but it will be looked at as part of the I-10 as well, because it's right there where I-10 and 110 come together. So part of that project.
Did you say you can do a left exit like at Washington, like Laurel Street, I guess, if you're heading east?
That's one thing that's going to be looked at, but I need to point out one thing is Federal Highway Administration has to approve any interchange modifications, and those have to go to Washington generally. And the national focus is on eliminating left-hand exits. because they don't meet driver expectations. Drivers generally expect to get off on the right, and that is what we try to do. Obviously, that's an old freeway there, and it's chock full of left-hand exits.
Only Baton Rouge.
Yeah, but it's an old freeway that was adopted into the interstate program a number of years ago. So it's got a lot of things that we wouldn't do today if we were building it. And left-hand exits are not what we would desire. I'm just saying it's going to be looked at.
Well, you just excluded that one.
It has
What else y'all gonna do?
It has some issues, yes.
You just excluded that one. What else y'all gonna do?
Okay, Mike, future BR, which the Metro Council adopted, calls for the city parish to implement a complete streets policy. What is the status of the complete streets policy planning?
Complete streets, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is where you consider all modes of transportation, including pedestrians, bicycles, transit, and the vehicular traffic. And the city's actually been working, the parish has been working for many months now, probably about a year, to draft a policy to where, as these street improvements come up for funding, that they be considered from a complete street standpoint. There's a draft policy that has been floated amongst a committee of people who are very interested in this. It's been reviewed and generally approved. It's going through a review right now at our planning commission level. Our new planning director, Frank Duke, has taken a personal interest in it. He's done these in other cities, and he wants to make sure that this one is done right. I would say we're just a few months away from having an adopt complete streets policy where we're trying to take into account all modes of transportation going forward in the city.
Thank you, Riley. The Loop project failed last time due to a lack of public support. Do you feel the public mindset has changed to get the support now?
Actually, there was a poll done in 5 parishes, and the lowest percentage that any parish got was around 78%. I think in West Baton Rouge is around 84, and it's like 86 in Iffelville. It passed in every parish in that poll. The poll, the Loop wasn't lost because of public support. We had some people who came to the meetings who didn't want it in their backyard. And those are the people who was loud enough, and they got the people to back off of these projects. But the Loop, you know, it could have went. I think it was a good project. We spent $7 million on that project, and we have a lot of information that we got from that project that we can still use going forward, even with some of these other projects like the bump of the West Bank Expressway. And I think Mike said we do some deliverables from the environmental side on the north portion of the Loop. So yeah, that's my opinion.
I'm going to ask Chris, since he represents Ascension Parish, to take a bite of this one.
Sure, thanks. The loop needs to happen. I mean, there's no question. The North Bypass, I think all the numbers showed, was the most traffic relief and would bring, would be the most feasible from a financial perspective with the tolls and everything. So if that is ultimately what the Capital Region delegation decides is the most important, then that needs to happen. I mean, I'm waiting to see what, based on all these projects, what the numbers show as far as traffic relief and safety and economic development, all those factors. That should be in the decision-making process. It shouldn't be about politics one way or the other. Of course, that's always going to be there, but I mean, I think facts speak for themselves. So I'm in support of seeing the loop happen.
Thank you. And while we've got the 3 representatives of the 3 parishes here, do you feel that all of the delegations, legislative delegations from the greater Baton Rouge area are working together deliberatively on this particular transportation challenge?
I think our legislators are pulled in so many different directions. We got a group who wants the West Bank Expressway, we got a group that wants the bump, we got a group that wants the bridge, and that's the point that I say we need to get together with the 5 parish presidents as well as the capital area delegation. And we need to come up with a plan that we can stick together and promote.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, Riley, he would get it on the head. I mean, that's absolutely the way it needs to be done, and it's not happening. I'm not from Ascension, so I get dinged about that all the time, part of that new growth, right? I mean, I'm from Baton Rouge, like half the parish in Ascension, so I commute every day. So, I've always been about regionalism. I think that's what people nowadays want. I think, frankly, a lot of that parochialism and all that that's just not in tune with the times. I mean, people don't, when they drive between Baton Rouge, South Baton Rouge and Ascension, or even Ascension and Livingston, I mean, it's an invisible line. I mean, it's all the same. So I like all these projects. I just want to see what makes the most sense from a traffic relief perspective, and then get the muscle and everything to make it happen.
I want to say that I'm not speaking for Mayor Holden when I say this. I'm speaking from a perspective of representing East Baton Rouge. But what we've seen happen with the Loop project and other projects is of course, a short-sighted vision by a lot of the leadership in the region. If the core of the region fails, meaning Baton Rouge, the core population and employment center, then the rest of the region will fail. That's a given by planners. They come in and tell you that. If the parishes surrounding Baton Rouge aren't vibrant, then the core fails. We depend on each other, but our leadership over time has not taken that vision. When we were doing a search for Jamie's position last year, that was a critical element that we all talked about as having to find a way to pull our leadership together to understand the benefits of being regional in their vision. We're still trying to get there. Jamie's working on it. I think all the parish presidents that Pee Wee has mentioned are more than willing now to take this on. Whether or not they can come together into agreement is the big issue. That's where we need to be.
Thank you. Can the I-10, I-12 be taken out of accident investigation so that wrecks and breakdowns can be moved immediately?
Actually, Senator Dale Erdy just passed a law, and it's in effect right now, the quick removal. As long as a sheriff or emergency responder is not negligent between the hours of 7 and 9, and I believe 4 and 6, they can do a quick removal on any state highway. And actually, that was more than they thought they were going to get. It's not just I-10 and I-12. It's on any state highway. They can do a quick removal.
Motorist assistance.
Oh, and then also recently, the Motorist Assistance Patrol that operates along I-10 and I-12 has been expanded in West Baton Rouge to US 190, basically the old River Bridge, LA 415, and LA 1. And we have seen since the MAP Patrol, that's what it's called, the Motorist Assistance Patrol, the MAP Patrol has been in service. We now have the shortest closure times on the interstate in the state of Louisiana in the Baton Rouge area. So even with a lot of congestion, our incident management has improved dramatically in the last few years. Okay, one number there.
The next question, when we talk about tolls, do any of you have any idea how much per trip and how much they could raise?
In studying the loop, that was a major issue, and of course the other projects that we're talking about moving forward, potentially the tolls. Historically nationwide, what's going on right now is about 16 cents a mile. So if you had a 5-mile trip, do the math on that. What is that? So less than $1 to do a 5-mile trip type of thing. And tolls are interesting because if you build a bypass, no matter where it is, what they found around the country is that certain people would like to pay it. It's worth their time to save that trip, and their trip might be reduced by 70%, maybe 80%. But at the same time, those people that get off the main highway, in this case it might be I-10 or I-12, those people benefit from the people that don't take the toll. So they, instead of saving 80%, they might save 40% of their time. It benefits everybody to build these toll roads. And they usually figure out what the pricing is going to be to get enough people to pay for the roll. They have all kind of computer programs that figure that stuff out.
So we will be able to buy something like the Sun Pass and jump on and jump off?
It's all electronic these days.
Great. Okay. Does anybody else have a question before I read the last question? Hearing none, Dennis Decker, can we put more ferries in place at Plaquemine and reopen the White Castle Ferry?
The tough ones for me, Actually, I'll say that I'm part of a group of, it's called the Greater Baton Rouge Industrial Alliance, and we actually have the executive director here somewhere, yeah, Connie Fabry. And she'll tell you, if you speak to her offhand, that we've been meeting along with her group, which is represents a number of the plants along the river, on the west and the east side of the river. And we've been talking about some solutions that could be put in place fairly quickly, and I think we've identified some things. And one of the things that was identified was increasing the ferry at Plaquemine, adding another ferry at Plaquemine. And we've been working there to try to come up with a solution for that. And I'll say that it is certainly a possibility. I can't absolutely commit to it today. But I have been in discussions with the secretary and others, and we're trying to come up with a solution to add another ferry there at Plaquemine. I will say during the peak hours. We've looked at the usage times, and there's peak hours, particularly in the afternoon, going from the west to the east, where we exceed the capacity of the ferry quite often, several hours there. And we're looking at possibly adding a ferry at that during those points in times. We have not looked at adding the ferry back at White Castle. I don't think that's been part of the discussion to add that ferry back into operation.
And one more question has come in, and this goes to, well, you, Archie. Do you see a future for regional transit between the parishes funneling into Baton Rouge?
Thank you. Yes, actually we do, and it comes from something that maybe we haven't talked a lot about today, and that's air quality. Maybe some of you all know last month Methanex bought all the ozone credits for industry. There are none available in the Baton Rouge area. They bought them at $40,000 a ton. And so we know this problem was coming up. We knew that it was on the horizon. We also have these impending Clean Air Act revisions that are going to ratchet the pollution requirements even harder on the Baton Rouge area. And so former DEQ Secretary Dr. Mike McDaniels has produced a position paper on emission reduction credits, and he's been shopping it around to elected officials and industry. And basically what that's going to do is have DEQ set up a clearinghouse where all kinds of projects in our area, whether that be low VOC paints, retrofitting laundromats, doing travel demand management such as carpooling and vanpooling, can be given EPA credits in a clearinghouse, and then industry can go buy these credits. And there's some precedents in federal law for that. For instance, during the Stimulus Act, there was the cash for clunkers. That was specifically to just exactly the same type of thing, an emission reduction credit. There was a case recently over in Houston where they upgraded their sewer system. They were able to, just by, in the process of upgrading their sewer system, sell their credits for $5.6 million. So they made money by improving their sewers. That credit then was sold to industry so that industry could expand. So regional transit is going to be a key component, not only reducing congestion, but it might be the key component to allow industry to expand. It might be the only one we come up with. We're not sure. We're still just starting the phases to look at that.
Thank you very much, and could I have a nice round of applause for our panelists? And we invite you again, if you are a member, it's time to renew your dues, and if you're not a member, why not? Join us next month on the third Thursday when we'll have another exciting hot topic from all points of view. Thank you for coming.
What did you say?